thanks, Mitch. I appreciate it, and welcome everybody for being here today, and and I guess making it through the weather. I think even last night talking to Mitch, we weren't sure if we could put this back on, but thankfully, here in Oxford, we missed a lot of the, as you know, frozen precipitation, and able to get you guys here and even get an inter-squad game in this afternoon. Excited to have Mitch here, new I keep saying sports information director. I apologize. I think the correct term now is communications director. But we welcome him here, and excited that he's part of the program, with us. Start off by saying that super excited to announce, once again, we broke another season ticket record. So kudos to the marketing team here, the communications team, and of course our ticket office. Over 8,000 season tickets. Just incredible, and a great fan base that continues to buy tickets, show up to the games, and support like no other program, and it makes it the greatest atmosphere in college baseball. And as might get asked a little bit later, because of the 8,000 season tickets, because of the support, there's vision by Keith and his staff to continue the expansion of the stadium and some different things, and that's really because of the growth of the fan base, and that we continue to sell tickets. And when you sell tickets and you actually sell more tickets than you actually have seats, doesn't take a genius of a businessman to realize that you got to build some more seats. And so they're in the process of doing that. It's still in its infancy, but I'm excited that it's important to them, that you work at a place that your sport is important. And Keith has always shown that. And so we're excited about the future of our facility. With that, talking about the team, I've said this a few times, and I think it might come across wrong, but it was somewhat of an uneventful fall for us, in a sense that it was kind of business as usual, and that can happen. I think when you have so many older guys return, so many veterans, and so when I say uneventful fall, it kind of went as planned, and I think sometimes as a coach, that's a good thing. That there wasn't many issues. Surely, we want those good surprises, but sometimes with good surprises, there's things that go wrong. No really injuries to speak of coming out of the fall, other than normal bumps and bruises. But an uneventful fall where the offense, that was the number one offense in the Southeastern Conference last year, just continued to swing well as we return, basically the entire offense from last year, even with Tim being sidelined with the ACL rehab. The offense just didn't miss a step, and continued to swing well, which in turn made it tough on a pitching staff that was, I think, trying to make a name for themselves, and so as well as we swung it, we probably swung it better than I would imagine that we would swing it. So I look back this morning, just trying to put it in perspective. We played 268 innings in the fall. So when you look at perspective, if you divide it by 9, that's almost 30 games, 29.7 games to be exact. So if you played 30 games, we hit 51 home runs, and so that's a lot of homers. We stole 77 bases, so a lot of offense, and that's nice. The problem is that you're on the other side of the ball as well. And so from a pitching standpoint, we probably didn't pitch it as well as I would like or hope. But with that being said, some guys really stood out. Of course, Derek Diamond led the pitching staff with the least amount of runs given up. But the guy with the lowest ERA was a grad transfer, and John Gaddis from the University of Texas, Corpus Christi, had a terrific fall. Normal names that our fans will know, guys like Brandon Johnson and Jack Doherty pitched well. But some newcomers, Jack Washburn, a transfer from Oregon State, pitched really well. Hunter Elliott, true freshman from Tupelo High School, pitched really well. Drew McDaniel pitched great. great, probably the second half of the fall. And so with all that offense, we felt good finishing the fall that we may have more depth on this staff, or we do have more depth on this staff, even missing Nikhazy, Broadway, and Hoagland. Overall as a staff, we probably have more depth and more talent than we did a year ago. And with those guys, those guys are a year older. And we did pitch it well. When you talk about the two scrimmages, playing University of Alabama and University of Arkansas Little Rock, I look back at those scrimmages and where against outside competition, not facing our hitters in the other dugout, we pitched it really well. One of the things I think doesn't get mentioned, in these types of settings, press conference, it just seems to be the least sexy thing is defense. But one of the things that I think as a goal of ours going in, we wanted to play better defense, this year. And not that we were poor last year, but we were average. And, to be an elite team, and especially to help a pitching staff out, we wanted to be able to catch it and throw it a little bit better. And I think we did that this fall and improved, defensively, as a whole. And the old adage, a lot of times when you look at your defense, how are you built up the middle? Where are you in those positions that are, the premier defensive positions? Catcher, in the middle infield, second base, shortstop, and of course in center field. And when you look at, Hayden Dunhurst behind the plate, and then up the middle, Peyton Chatagnier and Jacob Gonzalez in the middle infield, and then T.J. McCants or Justin Bench in center field, we're as strong as we've ever been here in this program in my 22 years up the middle. And so I think we'll really defend it well. And then one of the things I briefly mentioned, but I thought we did a great job, and another goal is to be more productive on the base paths, to not just stolen bases, obviously that's the easy, I think, metric or stat to look back at, but beyond that, to take the extra base, to be able to read balls in the dirt, to be able to move up, bases. Last year, I don't think we were as good as we could be. Some reasons for that. I think a reason that, we kind of put the parking brake on Peyton Chatagnier, who should be one of our best base dealers, but after the first month of the season and he tore his hamstring, we just played it really careful for him the rest of the year and didn't allow him to run. But another year of experience for Justin Bench and T.J. McCants, who are probably our best base stealing threats, and they continued this fall. All three of those guys running really well this fall, stealing bases, and as I mentioned, in approximately 30 games, we stole 77 bases against maybe the best catching trio that we've ever had here. And so it's not like they took advantage of catchers that couldn't throw, guys that kind of improved, our game as a whole. On the injury front, Tim Elko's, been back, been released to be able to go, full speed, looks 100% out there. I was even a little shocked a few weeks ago. I told Tim, pulled him to the side, watched him do it during an early work portion of our practice where it's just defense, and watched him move around at first base. And, easy to look at him and not realize, the injury that he had last year, and of course surgery, and how much work and effort that he put in, and Josh Porter, our trainer, has put in to get him back out on the field. But man, he looks amazing out there. And of course, in the first weekend, as Tim can do, 4 for 9 with 2 home runs in the first weekend. So pretty good start for him. And of course, Max Chofie is still, on a rehab front, and should be, able to pitch this year. Likely not until mid to late March. I don't know it off the top of my head. I've meant to bring it in here, the actual date, but of course the last month of rehab is critical to his bullpens and see where he is. But certainly he's hit all his marks, through the throwing protocol, and is ready to pitch, this year. I'll go around the diamond. Just to give you, the names, it's probably the easy part is to start with the position players. And I don't know a year when I've gotten ready for the press conference and tried to write down names. There's always, some question marks. This year, not as many question marks. Some guys have played really well, and the guys that we'll assume will start on February 18th are Kevin Graham in left field, T.J. McCants or Justin Bench in center field. in right field is one of those kind of by committee or open up very open at this point, and Hayden Leatherwood and Kemp Alderman. Kemp had a tremendous fall. Really proud of him. A kid that, as you know, was going to redshirt last year. We pulled him off the bench. Had a couple really big at bats, and big home run against LSU here on a Sunday that won the game for us. But a guy that's really worked with Mike Clement, our hitting coach, and has improved tremendously. And think that he's going to be a big part of the offense this year. So Leatherwood and Alderman and Wright at third base. Bench, our only first-team All-SEC candidate. In the infield. Justin had a terrific year for us this year, and I think could play center, could play third, could play anywhere in the infield, to be honest with you. But I think we'll start off the first weekend. You'll probably see him with a start in center and a start at third for sure. And Reagan Burford. Junior college transferred, that was here in the fall last year, transferred to Northwest Florida, and then back, here, gives us some depth in the infield and had a really good fall offensively and has a chance to start at third base. Shortstop. National Freshman of the Year Jacob Gonzalez returns, and excited to watch him just continue to get better every single day. And Peyton Chatinier at second base, as I mentioned, also. And then Tim Elko at first base. Behind the plate, Hayden Dunhurst. And so not a lot of surprises from the DH spot. Ben Van Cleve, had a really good fall for us. Calvin Harris, who's also a catcher, as you know, coming off arm surgery last year, I think is another candidate for the DH spot. And some of the other guys that don't find their position, as one of the starters in the field, obviously could be one of the DHs. From the pitching side, on February 18th, we'll start Derek Diamond on that Friday afternoon against Charleston Southern. After that, we're not sure. Right now it's still a lot of competition going on for those last two spots on Saturday and Sunday starters, and certainly could be fluid through the first 4 weeks. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, more depth, I think more options, more high-end, ability than we had last year. Guys like Jack Doherty and Drew McDaniel and Brandon Johnson have all pitched really, really well, and I think are candidates to be, weekend starters for us. And then the transfers that I've mentioned already, two of them, Jack Washburn and John Gaddis, and Dylan DeLucia, another junior college transfer, another one from Northwest Florida, that's pitched really well, pitched great last weekend, pitched really well at the end of the fall, along with a couple freshmen that pitched really well this fall. I mentioned Hunter Elliott and from Tupelo High School, and Riley Maddox from Jackson Prep. And then, as I said, Chofie's rehab is going really well, and I see him being a part of that bullpen, as the season progresses. So, with that, I'll open it up to your questions.
Touched on them a couple times, but what have you liked specifically out of Gaddis and Washburn since they've come in and tried to fit into the system?
Well, obviously they're different. One's a big power right-hander, one's a left-hander, but a little undersized. But Gaddis, probably from a fan standpoint, looks a little more like Doug Nikhazy in a sense that body size, attacks hitters. He's got a really good fastball that plays up. He's not going to light up the radar gun. He's going to throw the ball in the upper 80s, low 90s. But the fastball's got some swing and miss to it. Good breaking ball, really good changeup. Great competitor, a guy that was Southland Conference Pitcher of the Year last year, and so he's used to winning, used to having success, and to add an older guy like that to your staff, obviously, that's a plus for us. And it's not a secret, we don't have a lot of left-handed arms, so pitching from that side obviously is big for us as well. Jack, Washburn, is a kid that played at a one of the best programs in the country in Oregon State, and also played on the USA national team this summer, and so a guy that's used to playing in major college baseball, playing on a big stage, big power right-hander, really good fastball, really good breaking ball. Pitched mostly out of the bullpen for Oregon State last year, and I think has certainly got an opportunity to be a weekend starter for us.
You talked about
both of those guys, and they both had good years last year. But coming, to the SEC, how well do you think they can adjust to playing in a conference that has so much offense returning this year and the best conference in the country? And two, how much do you think you're going to kind of rely on those two guys this year?
Well, I think we're going to rely on them tremendously. The back part of your question. Nobody really knows the first part of your question. I think some of that's physical and some of that's mental and some of that's just a hurdle that everybody has to get through. But these are confident guys. These are guys, as you mentioned, had success in college and in high school, and they're older guys. And I think that's one of the things, especially from a baseball standpoint, not to turn this into a transfer portal press conference, but when you look to that, sometimes I think in baseball, that's the help is that they're older. The help is that they've done some of this. So as I mentioned earlier about Jack, pitching in the Pac-12 and pitching with Team USA, and John being the conference pitcher of the year. These are guys that have had success, and even though it hasn't been in the SEC. Really, nobody's had that unless you pitched in the SEC. So you can't usually use that, you can't use that, I think, as a negative. It's just something that they haven't done yet, but we think they're going to be big parts of what we're trying to do this year.
It's a little separation between the potential starters on the mound. How do you sort of balance giving those guys opportunities and sample sizes versus making sure you give everybody a shot?
Yeah, and I think it's a delicate balance. I think last year I did a poor job of not the starters necessarily, but with the bullpen and trying to find the right guys. And we had so many guys. At one time I looked up, and it was early in the season, and we had like 19 guys or 20 guys that had stats. And when I used the term or phrase that they had stats, meaning they pitched. And so when you're playing 4 times a week, you're pitching 19 guys. There's a lot of one innings, and that's not necessarily a sample size, and hard to judge one way or the other. But it's also, I don't think, benefits them, to where they get opportunities to pitch out of jams, to show what they can do. Can they extend and pitch more than an inning, and what where their role is going to be. So I say that first, where it's not the easiest thing. But with that being said, I think all of these guys that I've mentioned can pitch or have pitched out of the bullpen. They certainly can do that. We'll make the best choice that we can. We talked about it, Coach Lafferty and I, this morning, that at some point you make a decision and you go with the 3, but just because they're starting against Charleston Southern doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to pitch the next week against VCU or Central Florida, or they're going forward. We've had years where, on opening weekend, those 3 guys went the entire season, and it doesn't necessarily mean your team struggles that way, but there's times where guys pitch better than others. There's times where injuries or what have you change that rotation. And so I think sometimes a fall and an early spring like this, when there's so much competition, is a good thing. I think it's a healthy thing. And so just because they don't start, because let's face it, there's only 3 guys that are starting opening weekend. Just because they don't start doesn't mean that they won't start at some point. And so how do you, as you used the phrase, and I used it because you used it, the sample size, we've seen it. We've seen it, we've seen it years from, 15, 17 years ago. Will Klein, that started in a bullpen, became a starter. Scott Biddle was, the greatest closer we ever had, and we made him a starter, and he just rolled through it. TJ Beam, just because you start in the pen, or just because you have had success in the pen, a lot of times if you can get them out, you can get them out. And it doesn't matter if it's the first inning or the 9th inning. So,
with Derek's growth, have you seen him add or anything new or different, or is he just kind of becoming a more consistent version of the guy he's been the last 2 years?
One of the things I credit Derek is I think he just wants to always improve. He's always looking to get better, and unlike some guys in that age, right, at 19 to 22 years old, it's not just about velocity. I think he realizes that he's got the ability to run the ball up there in the upper 90s, but he wants to pitch, and to pitch and to be effective. He realizes that he's got to locate his fastball. That can be super overpowering at times, but to locate it better, to be able to mix 2 breaking balls in there, change up, work on his defending the steal and his pickoff move, to his body and nutrition and so on. And so I think he's really mature. One of the things that I will say about Derek and Drew and some of those others that I think fall into this category, so it's kind of a segue going off your question, is these are guys that they're in their junior year, they're in their third year, but last year was really their freshman year. You know, Derek, even though he pitched and he was the Sunday starter in 2020, you know, he never pitched an SEC game. You know, he played 4 games against non-conference teams and pitched well and you know, did what you would hope that he would do as a freshman, but he didn't get the benefit that a guy like Gunnar Hoagland did, where you can kind of get your nose bloodied a little bit in the SEC, and do you survive, and does that experience and that getting beaten up every once in a while, does that make you better? Well, I think the great ones, it does make better. Some guys aren't strong enough to get through that, and so when you look at Derek, when you look at Drew, some of I think their positives are awesome from last year, but some of the things that they struggled with or games that they had difficulty with. That's to happen. There's not many freshmen that run out there, and even though they were considered sophomores, there's not too many guys that run out there the first time. We realized that. We had a ladies' forum here last week, and one of the group was an older group. It's Tim Elko, but it was with Chatinier and a handful of guys that they're household names. They've been in the program. This is the third year, and they asked them what was their favorite venue, to go to in the SEC. Well, everybody but Elko had only been to the 5 schools. Because now, even though they've been here 3 years, they didn't get that 2020 year. They didn't get to go to, so they've only been to 5 schools out of the 14. So it's kind of a difficult question, and I think that just kind of shows you that it's there's a maturation period.
With all these pitching pieces that you talked about, some new faces, some with a little bit less experience, but how important is having a guy like Dunhurst back there just in terms of getting everybody acclimated?
Yeah, it's hard to quantify, but there's no doubt it's a big deal. Arguably the best catcher we've ever had, behind the plate, and that's saying a lot. We've had some really, really good guys back there, but the way that he handles pitchers, the way that he defends the running game, the way that he receives and keeps balls into the strike zone and makes pitches that are close look so good. He's terrific. He's a guy that's going to catch in the big leagues, and I'll let Derek and the other guys speak on what trying to read their mind. But if I was a pitcher, I'd like to pitch to him.
Where's Calvin with his development, receiving, catching, just everything?
He's done well, and both him and Knox, had really good falls, and I'm proud of it. The falls that they both had continue to improve, and Cal's, throwing. I mean, he looks like he did, before he hurt his arm, and which I think is the biggest thing. And like I said, Hayden will get most of the pub, which he should and deserves, but we got 2 pretty good guys, behind him.
Is TJ, in your mind, a full-time outfielder now, or is he working at third?
He continues to work in the infield. I think not that he couldn't play third, but I think he's probably more suited for the middle. At second base or shortstop. It's one of those things that happens in college baseball where ends up, probably his best friend and Jacob Gonzalez. You show up, and his career, in the infield may be different if Jacob wasn't here and signed out of high school. But he's a super athlete. I think the scouts, realize that he's a draft eligible sophomore, and he's a kid that has played infield in the scrimmages, and we'll continue to do that. I think 1, it gives us more depth and more options. 2, in fairness to him, who knows that may be the thing that he does when he gets to professional baseball.
Mike, you guys were 1 game away from Omaha last year. You have this whole offense basically coming back. You took advantage of the transfer portal, and you have some good young arms that showed some bright spots last year. Do you think it's realistic for Ole Miss baseball fans to have an Omaha expectation for this year's team? Yeah,
I mean, I think as a coach, and obviously I'm a little partial to that, but I would think that you would always have that expectation, and it's not a secret. We haven't been since 2014, but we've been really close, and it's 1 game, and you got to play a little bit better. You got to pitch it a little bit better. You got to swing it a little bit better. But I see no reason why this team doesn't have an opportunity to get to Omaha and be the first team in a few years to get there. I think we have all the pieces. Obviously the offense is there, but on the mound, I think we will surprise some people, and I think we will pitch, better than, most people, probably expect us to. And I say that just because it's easy, I think, sometimes when you sit back and you look at the names and Elko and Graham and Bench and McCants and Gonzalez and all the names that have had success. But I also think back to 2 years ago in 2020, the pandemic year, where, we got off to a great start, but we had lost Dillard and Zabowski and Kessinger and, this great offense from the year before, and nobody really knew where the offense was going to come from. People forgot. That's the nature of sports. It's the nature, especially of college athletics. If you're going to consistently win, which we hope we're one of those programs that consistently wins, that there's going to be times where you may not know the names and the faces quite yet, or maybe you know them, but they haven't quite had that success. But there's a reason for it, because Nikhazy pitched the big innings last year, and it was his turn to do that. It was Gunner's turn to do that, and Broadway's turn to do that. Well, now it's somebody else's turn.
You mentioned defense. How much of that is just individual emphasis on getting better in lineup construction versus, what you're putting out there from an improvement defensively?
Well, I think it's both. I mean, that's a tough question, but I think it's both. But to watch, and some of it's just maturing. Some of it, one of the things I've said a lot is, so much has been made of Jacob's year last year, but really probably from an offensive standpoint, to hit in the mid 300s and, hit all those home runs and RBIs and basically bat 2-3, the entire year on a really good offensive team. But not many people mention his defense, and he played every game at shortstop, at the most difficult position, and a lot of pressure at that position, and he did it well. He did it as well as any freshman we've ever had. I know he wants to do better, and the expectation is he'll play better. But when I look back at the great ones, there's not too many freshmen that went out and played every single day and played like he did defensively. But I know that's one of his goals individually, and I think collectively as a coach, we're also looking at big picture, right? We're looking at, can we shut down runs? Can we do some things, not just team defense and double cuts and those types of things, but collectively as a defense, can we play better and play an elite defense? Can we play in that 978, close to 980 range, to where you just don't give up runs? You're going to catch all the balls out there, and you're going to defend the steal. And when you have a guy behind the plate like Dunhurst, and you got the infielders that we return, we should.
What you've seen from Burford, what did you sort of see a year ago when he was here from the fall? Was there a lot of maturation since then? Or is it the same way?
Yeah, I just very mature approach offensively. He's a guy that's a little different, I think, from what our fans. He's not Elko or Graham, and he's not hitting balls out into the student section, but just a great approach where he's going to be a tough out. He can run, he can handle the bat, and so we're going to need that. Because we do have some guys in the middle that can swing. And one of the goals also that I didn't mention is to cut down some of the swing and miss that we had last year. I'm not a big strikeout guy, in the sense that we know that sometimes when you put big guys in the lineup that hit home runs, you're going to have a little more swing and miss. That's kind of the trade-off. And but you got to be careful not to have too much. And I think last year we bordered on that too much, where we'd like to cut that down. I know that's been one of the focuses for Coach Clement. They certainly did that this fall. And guys like Burford in a lineup, I think, help that cause.
Going off in multiple sports, there's a lot of bouncing around with the assistant coaches and all, and we've seen that in multiple sports. And how important or gratifying to have your staff pretty much intact.
Yeah, terrific. Carl Lafferty's the most tenured coach, assistant coach in the Southeastern Conference. Been with us since 2006 in some role, right? Of course, Mike Clement's been here since 2015. Yeah, when you talk about the two main guys, not to mention Chris Cleary's been here for a handful of years, and the operations guys. From a head coach's standpoint, man, it's much smoother, much easier. But if it's easier for me and smoother for me, you can only imagine what it is for the players. right? It's not learning a whole new system. It's not learning a whole new offensive system or philosophy or even coaches' techniques, right? Everybody's different. Everybody's got different personalities. And I'm fortunate. You know, I've had some great coaches here, as you know, that have gone on to be great coaches, head coaches at other programs. But I don't know if I've ever collectively, and I mean that. I know coaches say that, but man, I'm really blessed. These guys are terrific, and to have Clem and Laugh here, make us a lot better and make my job a lot easier.
Playing off that a little bit, does that make it easier to accept the Team USA thing? Because we got the portal and the summer going on, but you can trust.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was scared to death as an assistant in 2013, just because. I don't know if you realize it. I'm kind of hands-on as a head coach, and so to be able to to be out of the country, to be gone, and it's not that long. This year's tour will be less than 3 weeks, and so. Heck, that's just a fishing trip for Kiffin, right? So, no, I'm teasing. I shouldn't have said that. But for us, it's a tough thing, and it's right in the middle of recruiting. But to have guys like that, you're exactly right. We've done it one time, and they handle it terrific. Matter of fact, I think that was probably the summer. Maybe it helped because I think that led into that 2016 class was the #1 ranked recruiting class in the country. So maybe Laugh and Clem could pull one of those out again. That would be good.
What have you seen kind of click for Kemp since the fall? You said he had that hot fall.
The biggest thing is to be able to work on his approach. I think some of it we talk about is just maturation and confidence, and some of it's just I think approach and worked with Coach Clement where there's just a lot less swing and miss, a lot more. Swinging at balls in the zone. Last year, he would get himself in bad counts, and again, some of that, like I said, is just being a young guy and wanting to do well, and at times emotionally maybe not handling it the best. But this year he looks like a different player. I'm excited for him. That's not to just put it all on him. I mean, it's only his second year, and he didn't have a ton at bats last year. But just proud of I wanted to mention him because just proud of the way that he worked this fall and in the fall that he had to put himself in position to help us and be a big piece for this lineup.
How special can Jacob be? And I mean, is it even possible for him to surpass the numbers that he put up last year at such a young age?
Somebody asked me that, and that's the unfair thing of sports, right? Once you do well, the expectation is, what's next, or do you hit 400 now? Do you hit 20 home runs? And I think Jacob's smart enough that you can't just look at it that way, right? You just got to go out and play and look at certain areas of your game. If it's defensively, if it's to cut down strikeouts, if it's to hit the ball, whatever that is for you, to try to improve that way. The stats are the stats, but. Now he may answer differently. Maybe there is a goal to hit 375, but I think probably the best road to success is to put it in perspective and just say that I want to prove these parts of my game, versus some expectation from a reporter from Columbus to say that I'm supposed to hit a certain amount to say that I did improve. I think if he could put up the same numbers he did last year, I think we'd be real happy.
Coach, you got all this experience coming back, especially guys like Bianco. How much does that make it easier on you to motivate these guys for that run to Omaha?
I don't look at it that way. I think my job's always to look at ways to motivate them, I think to encourage them to look and see things that they may not look at. But at the end of the day, I think my job is to get them to play the best that they can play. And sometimes that's motivation, sometimes that's kicking them in the rear, sometimes that's showing them, what they can do or what we're doing now and what we shouldn't do. So it's a lot of different things, but I don't necessarily think it's just giving a motivational talk in the outfield or showing a motivational video. But I do think almost in reverse is, not that they would get complacent, that sometimes you take for granted And we don't want that. That was kind of a challenge to some of the leaders yesterday, that you don't want to just take for granted that we're going to have a good year. You don't want to take for granted that we're going to have a good offense. You don't want to take for granted. You want to do the things that help you have that offense, to have that team, have that leadership. To me, the focus is to make sure that you're doing the things that you need to do every single day, so you can have the days that you want to have, right? And that's what we're trying to do in the next couple weeks, is to not look at February 18th, but to look at each day and how can we improve each day to be the best baseball team that we can be.
Mike, given the injuries and everything that you had that went on last year, was last year one of your better coaching jobs individually?
Absolutely. I joke, Parrish, that's for you guys to judge. I don't look at it that way. I will say that it's the most proud that I've ever been, of a team. And because of that, because there were so many times where when you have those adversities, we're human, right? And it doesn't matter if you're a reporter or you're a fan or you're a coach or a player, you feel those and you go, wow, how are they going to recover from this? How are they going to be able to bounce back from this? And we're not just talking we're not just talking about losing a quarterback, which is huge, right? That's like losing your Friday night starter, but you're talking about losing your best hitter, for a month and not sure if he's ever coming back. And, the first month we lose our second baseman and our closer, and Max Chofie. And it just seemed we lost Doug, people forgot, we lost Doug Nikhazy for 2 weeks, to start conference play. It just seemed, like every 3 or 4 weeks, we got kicked in the gut. And to their credit, they just continued to bounce back, to show that grit, to show that resilience, and to have the year that they had, to win 18 conference games, to win 45 regular season games, and to put yourself in that position, to be one game from Omaha. Yeah, what a disappointing finish, but I don't know if I've ever been more proud, of any team in the 22 years than that team, because they went through a lot and almost made it to Omaha.